This is Open Parameter Podcast, conversations about the intersection of life and art with artists from around the world. Come chat with us on our Discord server and get monthly early access to episodes by becoming a supporting member today at patreon.com/openparameter. Welcome back to Open Parameter Podcast. I'm your host, Del Cook. My guest today has been called one of the most sought-after young composers in America. Quinn Mason is a composer and conductor based in Dallas, Texas. He has written for groups such as the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, the Utah Symphony Orchestra, the chamber ensemble Loadbang, Atlantic Brass Quintet, Voces Intimae, and more. He has received awards from the American Composers Forum, Philadelphia Youth Orchestra, Heartland Symphony Orchestra, the Diversity Initiative, Voices of Change, and Texas A&M, among others. His teachers and mentors include Lane Harder, Robert X. Rodriguez, Libby Larsen, David Dzubay, and the late David Maslanka. An avid and passionate writer, Quinn maintains his own classical music blog and contributes guest articles to other blogs, such as the Women's Philharmonic Advocacy. Quinn is a member of ASCAP, the Conductors Guild, and is a frequent contributor to IMSLP, the International Music Score Library Project. I met Quinn many years ago at a summer percussion program, and it is a pleasure to get to speak with him today. Quinn Mason, welcome to Open Parameter Podcast. How did you survive the cold weather that we had last week?
Well, first off, Dill, thank you for having me. It's nice to speak with you again. Like I keep saying, we go way back. And so, yeah, it's really cool that we still are connected. And as far as I kind of dealt with the cold weather, lots of blankets, lots of body heat, which I discovered works wonders, actually. And yeah, just a lot of waiting, a lot of quick charging up of phones and things like that. So yeah, it was quite interesting that how it was very unexpected, first of all, like all of that. And then the power outages were, they were supposed to be rolling blackouts, but they turned up the last days. So, but yeah, I found a way to survive somehow.
Did you lose power at all?
Yes.
Oh man.
For about 4 days.
4 days straight, you had no power, didn't even come on?
Well, no, it came on in like 2-hour increments and then would cut off in like 6-hour increments.
Wow.
It was ridiculous, actually.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that, man. That is not fun. Are you located in Dallas proper? Because I know that at one point you may have been in Fort Worth. I can't remember.
No, I live in Dallas, so
Okay.
I was very much in the thick of it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Wow, yeah, we lost power here for like a day, and then I'm in Plano, and so that we of other people I know and the rest of the state, we thankfully kind of dodged a bullet a little bit. But anyway.
Are you in a house?
Yeah, I'm in a house.
Yeah, we're in apartments. So.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, apartments definitely got hit really hard by that weather last week with like pipes bursting and stuff. None of your pipes burst, did they?
Oh, you know what? Like after the power came back on like Tuesday or Wednesday, then the water went off.
Oh, great.
So yeah, I gained one thing, lost another thing. But
yeah, definitely.
Around the weekend, it all came back on and everything's back to normal. So
that's good. Did that throw off any composition you were doing?
Actually, no. Like I made it a point to charge up my computer as fast as possible, and actually got to complete a piano sonata in the cold weather, and that almost led me to call it Sonata Antarctica. But
that's a good title, man. No, that's a good title.
Well, I call it Sonata 21 instead. So
okay, you should definitely title another piece Sonata Antarctica. The poetry of that is so perfect.
It's not a bad idea.
I like it. So, getting into your general career and your life and your work, I'd like to ask you first, what would you call your earliest musical memory?
Definitely, when I was younger, I used to listen to the radio a lot. And I guess my earliest musical memories would be just listening to the radio and hearing these different pieces of music come on, classical music, and just being fascinated with everything. And how some pieces are overplayed. They would play them like 2 or 3 times a month, and then I would kind of memorize them and just remember the names. So like by the time I was like 10 years old, I knew what the Dvorak Ninth Symphony was, and the Beethoven Fifth, and the Mozart 40th, and all that. Uh, and that basically set me on my path, and my, I guess you can even call it, an obsession with classical music, because I used to go to there was a thrift store near my house, and I would get these CDs, these specifically Herbert von Karajan CDs with the Berlin Philharmonic, which kind of got me addicted to the orchestra as well. And then that also set me on the path to um, my journey to learn how to create music, which I, when I reached elementary school, then I took required piano classes. So definitely discovering the classical music masterpieces for the first time is some of my earliest musical memories. I mean, if you want to go back way like far, like when I was a baby, um, my mom, and there's a photo of this. She put headphones on me and played. Do you know that song "In the Air Tonight"?
Yes.
She played that song to me, and I guess I was fascinated by it, because like you see this, like in the photo, you see like this big-eyed baby just like staring like in the space, like his mind was being blown. And that, I guess I was being blown away by that music. And I had headphones on and a little afro. I couldn't believe it. So,
That
but
is
I
cute.
remember that.
Hmm. You said that you were able to memorize the music that you heard on the radio. It's been conveyed to me through a mutual mentor of ours, Doug Howard, just how perfect I would say your memorability is for music. Um, it seems that I've been told, that you're able to listen to a piece on the radio, and then you can essentially either transcribe it or play it on the piano, and record yourself doing that. Did that when did you first sort of realize that you could do that? Because that's something that's incredibly talented to be able
Uh,
to do.
and actually, honestly, I can't tell you exactly where that comes from. It's just kind of, it's just it's just this weird thing that I someone else discovered that I had. I didn't
Mhm.
discover, and it was actually an aha moment when I was like in elementary school. I think I was around 11 or 12, and I had this mentor who was actually a teacher, who recognized my love of classical music and my gift, and he gave me CDs and everything. And one day he bought me like this small electric keyboard, and and he played, and then he somehow, I don't remember what, he used to play classical music in class all the time. And he one day he played the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto Number 1, uh, which I never heard up until that point. And you know those opening piano chords, right? The bum bum
Mhm.
bum bum. Uh, I somehow recreated that on the piano keyboard, and the teacher was blown away by it. He's like, "Wait a second, are you playing that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've never heard that before." But I was somehow, and I was playing it in B flat. No, no, sorry, D flat, which which is, but I had never seen the score before.
Right.
And and I don't know if you've ever actually asked Rogine about this, but I used to give her like tapes of music, specifically tapes I used to record myself
Yes.
playing.
Mhm.
And I think you know where this is going. I gave her
Yes.
a tape of me doing the Barber Adagio one time, and I'd never
Yes.
ever seen the score.
Right. Yeah, no, Doug, I should mention for those who don't know, Virgin is Doug Howard's wife, and both of them are mutual mentors of both Quinn and I. And Doug has conveyed to me that story about the Barber Adagio before, and I was floored when I heard it when I heard that story. Do you still have that ability? Do you still do you use that ability in your work?
To an extent, yes, I do still have that ability, and it helps a lot. It helps out a lot when I'm transcribing something
Hmm.
because I have such an, an interesting ear for detail. I can hear all the little things in recordings, and I'm able to like transcribe like perfect scores and things like
Yes.
that. Like I did a couple of videos where I transcribed music from cartoons, and then the composers themselves somehow like I transcribed the song that was used in the SpongeBob cartoon, and the guy who wrote it for the SpongeBob cartoon commented on my video.
Really? Wow.
Yes. Another time is when I transcribed. You remember that show Ed, Edd n Eddy?
Oh, yes, I do.
You know how that music had like it had like a jazzy kind of feel to it. Well, I transcribed one of those tracks, and then the composer himself, who wrote the music for the show, posted one of my videos on his Facebook page,
Wow.
which
I
is so yeah, it's weird.
I think my favorite one of those videos is when you transcribed every single one of the Empire floor themes.
Oh my gosh.
800 I-88 to 300 Empire. You went through and you found every single one of them, and you transcribed all of them. And I listened to it, and you do it so accurately, and you you also list like what years they were aired on top. Where did you get the idea to do that, by the way? Where to
Oh, that
to
was
really
definitely boredom. I get whenever I get bored, I do these weird projects, which it's it's mostly just to pass the time. So I was like, because you know how those commercials used to come on TV
Oh yeah,
all the time.
it's like a staple of our childhood.
It 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 never got annoying though. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
It was always fresh every time you heard it. So I was
Hmm.
like, let me revisit this and see because I discovered that not that version that we grew up hearing wasn't the only one. So I went
Yes.
back and I found all of these versions from all these different like years and things like that. So yeah, it was quite an interesting project, and that's one of my most popular YouTube videos. People comment on that all. I don't know what they find interesting about it, but I'm glad they do.
Well, I think it's the fact that you can that you act not only do you play the tune, but the original audio, but then you also have the transcribed audio with the sheet music there that you transcribed, and I think that's really fascinating because people can really look at how those chords are voiced, and just the fact that you're able to do that, and the fact that you did that, like someone actually took the time to go through and really figure this out, and I've thought about sending you tracks, and being like, hey, can you transcribe this too? I mean, you could really capitalize that on that, man. Just being able to um I'm actually, have you considered that? Have you considered sort of starting your own business, and as a professional transcriber of audio?
Maybe in later life. I mean,
Hmm.
my composition has gotten so busy I wouldn't have time for it now. But like
That's
later, if
that's good to hear.
yeah, but like maybe later when
Certainly.
things kind of settle down, I can be like, yeah, if you need anything transcribed, I'm your boy. So, but I mostly do it for fun. So,
Sure. And I would say that it's good practice. Wouldn't you agree?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just studying those recordings, and the older the recording is, the more challenging it is, especially because you know the quality degrades, and you know
Hmm.
mono sound uh, pushes everything to the center of your auditory kind of range. So it's really interesting. It's really challenging when things are too close together. But you know, with this stereo thing, you can hear like you can hear trumpets on your left and then trombones on your right. And you can hear every single note of the chord. So yeah, having a good ear helps.
Indeed. Do you find that you have to slow the recordings down in order to pick stuff out, or do you just kind of listen to them at the regular speed?
For faster stuff, like if it's a 16th note run at like 132 BPM, yes. I'm admittedly not good at picking up on that in the first hearing. I definitely have to slow that down and pick out every single note individually. But for slower stuff, yeah, I can just usually like I can get it on my first try. So
That's impressive. I'm gonna need after the show. I'll need to talk to you. I have some tracks I want you to transcribe. There's some
I'll attempt it.
Yeah, there's some stuff by Chick Corea that I've wanted to arrange for percussion ensemble. I'd love to work with you on, but we'll definitely chat about that later. So, like you said, you you said that your composition has become very busy, and you've written more music than most people your age, I think, have written. Looking on your website, I would say this is an estimate that you've probably written well over 100 pieces of music. Um,
Well, best believe everything on my website that you see, that's not even a quarter of it. There's way more where that came from.
I would think so.
So it's more like over 475.
Wow, that's a very specific number.
I keep a spreadsheet of everything I've ever written, and
Really?
it's not complete. Of course, there's more, but for now, I think I have over 475 different boxes on that thing.
Oh my
So,
gosh. That is impressive. So what do you attribute to the amount of music that you've written in what is relatively a short period of time?
well, I mean, I started writing pieces when I was like really young, and then I noticed a trend. Um, my kind of output increased when I got notation software. So around 2011, 2012 was when I did most of my it's not recording, composition. In fact, in 2012 alone, I think I wrote about over 150 pieces in 2012. So that was my most
Wow.
prolific year. And then as the years progressed, uh, the, the output kind of dwindled to specific things that I got commissioned for and things like that. But it was mostly just experimenting and seeing, okay, can I write for four trombones? Can I write for three basses? And some of that stuff, like was while experimental, I was actually proud of. Like I know that a fanfare for four trombones I wrote for in 2012 just for myself is actually starting to get a lot of play, and that I attribute that to it's a minute long and it's actually really strong in composition. But I wrote that piece when I was 16, so it's some of the things I've been able to do with composition is pretty unbelievable, actually. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, um to be able to write something so complete at such an early age is definitely a triumph. Do you since you've written so much music, is it even possible that you have a favorite piece?
hmm, that's definitely like picking your favorite child. So
Yes.
it's a bit of a challenging question to answer, but if I were to say um if I have a composition I'm proud of, hmm, it would either be a Joyous Trilogy, which I wrote last year and premiered last year, and that piece definitely I'm proud of the way they came out in terms of the orchestration, the form, musical style, and what I wanted to say with the piece. It's definitely a strong piece. Another piece is one I wrote late last year called "Reflection on a Memorial," which the Dallas Symphony commissioned, and I really like how that piece turned out too. It's been played about four times already since its premiere in November,
Wow.
and definitely hearing uh, how different orchestras interpret. It's just a work for strings. It's about 10 minutes long. It's not a big, huge piece, but it's a strong piece, and I think it's one of my favorites because it's a piece for the times. Definitely, it's inspired by the events of this summer, but I opened up the meaning so it could be a reflection on any memorial or event. I know a friend who's going to play it with the Mesquite Symphony. and they're doing it on a September 11th concert.
Mm.
So that's the beauty of a piece like that. So yeah, those are two pieces I like how they turned out.
In reading through your program notes, I found that sometimes you like to write music that is about, and I mean, many composers fall under this category of sometimes they like to write music that's about something, or sometimes they will write music that's about nothing. But speaking specifically of the music that you wrote for, you said Requiem for Memoriam,
Reflection on a Memorial.
excuse me, Reflection on a
It's okay.
Memorial. Uh, you said that that piece was influenced by a particular event, but could be used for other events, and that seems to be a rather consistent theme among many of your pieces, is that you don't like them to be restricted to one specific time or place or person. Would that be accurate?
Lately, yes. And I found that, with so much going on in the world, with these types of compositions, musicians can relate to them personally, and they play them to their audiences, and their audiences can relate to them personally. A great example of that is a viola solo I composed in April of last year, called "In Memory."
Hmm.
Uh, it was my very first kind of eh, foray into this open interpretation type of deal, and found that violists in particular who are extremely happy to get new music. So they'll definitely think about writing solo viola music.
Yes, yes.
But with a type of piece like this, and the time it was composed in April before the events of the summer, with the riots and
Hmm.
everything happened, it started to kind of pick up momentum around that time, and it's been played a lot. It's been played over 60 times,
Wow.
and around the world actually. And that piece isn't even a year old, and
Hmm.
I attribute that to the fact that it spoke to a lot of people. It spoke to a lot of audiences. It's really short. It's about 2 minutes long. It's not hard. I designed it for all levels of violists, so it's been played in all sorts of situations. But that's just like that definitely showed me firsthand the power of a piece of music that not only the performer can interpret in their own way, but the audience as well. And it's a really powerful statement.
It's good to hear that you have a, or at least you seem to have a concern or desire to benefit both the performer and the audience. You're concerned about how they feel about the music, and I mention that because, well, I don't want to sound negative, but there are others who do what we do, Quinn. Who are composers in the contemporary classical realm, who don't always exhibit that kind of concern, and so it's good to hear. It's always good to find someone who exhibits that concern for both performer and audience member.
Well, I don't know when I learned this. I learned this a long time ago, but I learned that if performers can connect to a piece of music and they like playing it, they'll want to play it again and again. And I definitely write my music to be played multiple times. I don't write it to be played once and then shelved forever, like I've seen with so many pieces of contemporary music.
Yes.
I definitely like uh, my music to take on a life of its own, and because like I don't really think of these pieces as my children, but something close to it. Like I spent a lot of time and effort into creating these pieces, so definitely, yeah.
How do you, aside from leaving the interpretation open and leaving the meaning or the reference to a time or place somewhat ambiguous, how do you approach making the actual content of the music um, r- fitting for more than just one performance? Avoiding the shelf, the perform and shelf. How do you actually how do you approach accomplishing that?
Well, I've over the years kind of perfected this accessible kind of style where it's still contemporary, but it's still approachable to audience members or performers who aren't familiar with me or my music. So they know right from they play the very first note, they hear the very first note, and they're like, okay, I think I'm going to like this. Uh, Prime example is my Joyous Trilogy. You know how people feel about new orchestral music. They're skeptical.
Yes.
And I composed that piece for Orchestra Seattle, and also on that program was the Clarinet Concerto of Mozart and the Rite of Spring of Stravinsky. So two great masterworks, and then
Wow.
this unknown piece.
Yes.
So, but I conducted my own piece and also gave a pre-concert lecture about it with the music director Will White, who a great friend and mentor of mine. And after, and I conducted the premiere of that piece. Actually, in the intermission after the Mozart concerto, was a small reception in the lobby. So I got to interact with most of the audience members, and a lot of them came up to me and told me, usually when I see a new orchestral piece on the program, I'm like, oh no. But with this piece, I actually really, really like this piece. It was accessible, and I could definitely tell. Uh, I can definitely tell you the type of personality you have from your music, and that actually spoke to me a lot. Like that's exactly why I wrote that piece. I actually wrote it for the orchestra's 50th anniversary, but I injected a lot of my own personality into it. So
Indeed. And
yeah,
your own musical influences, because I listened to that piece in researching for this, and I can't I don't think I would be able to get away with doing an interview with you without mentioning Stravinsky and talking about him for a bit. And I could definitely see the influence of Stravinsky. It's well known among your circle of friends that you hold a special place in your heart for a particular piece of his. I've heard that you love this piece so much that you actually carry a copy of the score with you wherever you go. I think you know the one I mean. Um, which piece is that, and why is it so special to you?
I'm glad you brought that up. The piece is the mystery piece is the Rite of Spring. Great piece of music, history making piece of music. And I have a bit of a personal connection with this piece because it was one of the very first, it was actually the very first large orchestral piece I studied in formal composition lessons. And of course, like everyone's first time approaching the score, it was extremely confusing, especially that last dance with the changing time signatures every single bar. And I was told to listen to this piece and write my observations on it. So I listened to it um, all the way through with really not good recording. Boston Symphony and Pierre Montier. Pierre Montier premiered the piece, but the recording with the Boston Symphony is very unclean. So, but to supplement that, I think that same season I started studying it. The Dallas Symphony was playing it with Yop conducting. And Doug actually took me to one of the rehearsals with the score. So not only did I listen to this recording with the score, but also attended an actual live rehearsal of
Mhm.
the piece with the score. And that got me super into, first of all, conducting, because watching Yop work was, I mean, back then it was great. Watching the piece being put together
Absolutely.
was very educational, and then attending the concert and hearing the result of that was mm, it's a great memory for me. And so like definitely I remember putting that piece away for a few years and then coming back to it in like high school or something like that. And then I bought not only one copy of the score, but like 6 copies of the score, all different editions. And then sometime after that, I started seeking out different recordings of the piece and going in the archives and getting recordings. And now I have 723 recordings of the Rite of Spring.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know how it got to that point, but that's just how big my love for it.
That has to be a record.
It probably is. Like I probably have more than any archive in the world.
Yeah, you need to get with Guinness on that one, man. You might have a record there.
Maybe
I'd
one
I'd
day.
I don't even think Stravinsky had that many recordings of himself, or excuse me, of that piece.
No, I don't think
Um,
he ever heard that many in his lifetime, and he wrote the
no,
piece.
yes. Um, is it true that you carry a score with it of it with you at all times?
I wouldn't say all like I wouldn't go to the grocery store carrying a score of this piece,
Right.
but like definitely whenever I travel somewhere, like if I'm on a plane and I'm going to like uh, attend the rehearsal or a premiere of one of my pieces, I'll definitely take a pocket score just so I study that because every time I open that score, there's something new I discovered that I missed previously. It never, without fail, there's like 1,000 different things in that score waiting to still be discovered. And I actually had the good fortune to kind of pseudo assist my friend Will when he was conducting this piece in Seattle, and got to help out a little bit. I got to rehearse the percussion section a little bit, but
Oh, that's
definitely
very fun.
I've had some hands-on experience with this piece.
Absolutely. Um, Going back to your music, one of your pieces titled Concerto for Violin and Small Ensemble is for very interesting instrumentation. It's for, of course, violin, but then also cello, flute, trombone, tuba, and percussion. And that, as far as I know, I could be wrong. I've been out of the game for a little bit, but as far as I know, that's not a standard instrumentation. And I think it's incredibly brave. I like to do this myself, but I think it's incredibly brave when a composer writes for such a non-standard instrumentation. We're often expected to write for string quartet or wind quintet, or of course orchestra or percussion. Um, but or Pierrot ensemble, which is very popular. Uh, and and yet there are some of us, and you're absolutely one of these people who really says, well, what if we paired a tuba with just a trombone? uh, and it's interesting because I listened to the piece and it works. It works very well. But why did you choose those instruments in particular for this piece?
And that's a great example of desperate times calls for desperate measures. The instrumentation you see in those videos are all the people that would actually play for me. So I asked the flutist, and then I originally asked the clarinetist and the double bassist, but couldn't find it. Um, but that's still in the score. I had a trombone friend, a tuba friend, a cello friend, and I was really good friends with the percussion TA. So
Hmm.
I ended up just writing for them, like those parts are for them, and then the violin part was written for an artist diploma student who I actually just saw him play his recital. Went up to him after the recital, was like, "I want to write you a violin concerto." So that's basically how this piece came about. Was basically I had some friends and I just wrote for them.
And that was when you were studying at TCU.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that makes a lot of sense when you're working in a university program. You have more. I would say you have more access to resources than uh, not being in a university program. But at the same time, everyone's very busy, and finding performers who are actually available can be difficult. And so that makes perfect sense. And I think it was very serendipitous that those particular instrumentalists said yes, because then it created this wonderful piece with an intriguing instrumentation.
It actually turned out very well. Like I was very surprised in the first rehearsal that most of that worked.
Yes.
And so, but definitely it's drawing back on my knowledge of orchestration, just seeing whether all this would work because it's a wind instrument and then two low brass and then a low string instrument plus percussion. I mean, you would think that there's not much you can do with that, but if you know like the different like characteristics of each range of instrument and then you have a
Mhm.
whole variety of percussion you could choose from, you can actually create fascinating soundscapes.
Well, as soon as I heard it, I went, "Okay, I need to write for this instrumentation," because it really does work, because you have it it's instruments that are not normally paired together by themselves. They're normally accompanied, these are instruments that most often are performed in the context of a much larger orchestra. And so the flutes would also be next to oboes, and the clarinets would be next to them as well, and the trombones are next to trumpets. But this piece is trombone sans trumpet, but plus a tuba. But the what I think what and I think you know you can agree or disagree, but the I think what allows that piece to work so well is that each of those instruments allow combined um cover a very wide tessitura of octaves, right? Like you have a very high instrument, but you also have a very low instrument, and then everything in between. And so I think that's why you're able to do so much with those instruments, even though they normally wouldn't be paired. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And as I mentioned previously, there was actually supposed to be more instruments. There was supposed to be a
Yeah.
clarinet. So it was supposed to be two of each, two wind, two brass, two strings, two low strings, excuse me. So we have a flute and a clarinet, which doubles a bass clarinet, trombone, tuba, and a cello and double bass. So
Hmm.
right off the bat, we have a very, very heavy low end because you have four low instruments, but only
Yeah.
three high instruments. But then you have the percussion, which the timbres of the different, and you have the everything from the triangle to the tam tam to the bass drum, and so yeah, like you said, that covers a wide variety of ranges. And I'll actually that revised original version with the full instrumentation will actually be done this Friday. So
Oh,
I'll
really?
actually get at the Manhattan School of Music. So I'll get to hear it as I intended it.
That's awesome. That's great. That's very cool. Did and well the original performed version at TCU, did you take the instruments that are missing? Did
Mhm.
you did you take did you just I mean, did you have music written for those instruments that are missing and that you just said, I'm going to cut that out? Or did you take the content from those instruments and put them in the other instruments? How did you manage all that?
That was a situation where I couldn't find people for those instruments to play for me. Like the clarinetist wanted me. I couldn't find the clarinetist to play for me in the school, so someone put me in touch with a clarinetist who was outside of school, and he wanted me to pay him, and
Mhm.
I didn't have any money, so I said, I'm just going to rewrite that part. And then the double bassist, who was actually a student, that's the entire bass studio of 8 people, and no
Yes.
one said they couldn't play for me.
Yeah.
Everyone said no. And then the one person I did find who was also a student at the same school wanted me to pay him, but he was playing on another composer's work free of charge. So I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm not dealing with this. So I had to rewrite a lot of stuff. I put most of the double bass part in the tuba, and it worked very well because most of it was doubled anyways. And then the clarinet stuff, some of the stuff I just couldn't rewrite, so there was a lot of missing chords.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's how the story of that happened, but it ended up working anyways. So
Did you revoice some of those chords to be a particular way? Did you say, "Well, I wonder, let's see what this sounds like."
no, most of it I just took out,
Interesting.
and the fact that it still worked was miraculous to say the least.
It's funny because when I heard that piece, I thought, um and I sometimes hate to ask this, I hate to ask such a direct question of a composer, because when I get asked a question like this, I'm like, "Ah." But when I heard that piece, I thought, "This sounds very Bernard Herrmann influenced."
Hmm.
What do you think?
I mean, interesting. I guess I haven't listened to much Bernard Herrmann. I've heard like the film music to like Vertigo
Yeah.
and Psycho, but like his concert pieces, I'm not that familiar with. I was actually going for a more that very first part. I was going for a 12-tone Schoenberg,
Sure.
mostly Berg type of feel,
Mhm.
because the first part of the concerto is about anxiety as a college student.
Yes.
So I wanted to definitely recreate that feeling.
Um I'll have to send you specifically the section of the piece that I thought um, reminded me most of the score to North by Northwest. Um, but that was what struck me, and I hate to bring that up because we've all been at a concert of our work, right? And had some audience member come up to us later and said, "That sounded exactly like this. Were you influenced
Mm,
by that?" Or, "Wow, you could write music for the movies." Does that
I've
drive
got.
you? Does that annoy you as much as that annoys me when I get that question?
I mostly just respond to it by saying, "Oh, thank you. I never heard it like that before,"
Absolutely.
or something like that. But like, yeah, I don't really. I'm starting to actually. The more I write, I'm starting to get that less and less,
Oh, that's good to hear.
which is great. But whenever I do get that question, I got that question with the Joyous Trilogy a lot. Some
Mhm.
people actually caught out who I was influenced by, like John Adams and things
Yes.
like that. And I'm like, whenever they said, that sounded exactly like John Adams, I just say, thank you so much, because I love John Adams.
Sure.
So, but yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's annoying whenever I get the question. I would just have to say, it's definitely interesting to hear how other people hear my music. So,
Yeah, it can, and I shouldn't say it's always annoying. Sometimes it's gratifying, especially if someone comes up to you and says, "Well, that reminded me of John Adams. Were you influenced by X composer that you might happen to actually admire?" Um, but you said that you started to get that question less and less, and that bodes very well because I would imagine that means that you're sounding more like yourself. But why do you? Well, now I've answered my question for me, possibly, but why do you think that you're getting that question less as time goes on?
I'm starting to. I do a lot of writing, and I utilize all these different techniques. Like every time I write, I experiment with something, and I see what works and I see what doesn't work, and I'm just slowly starting to weed out uh, the things that work and the things that don't work, and I'm starting to put those kind of like putting them into my own words, basically. I wouldn't say plagiarizing. I would definitely have to say kind of paraphrasing and using those compositional techniques with with uh, the compositional language that I really like writing in, and that is actually making for some very interesting original music. Um, to the point where, like you said, I'm starting to get those comparisons less and less. I mean, I'm still not immune from them, but
Yes.
like some people said that my reflection on Memorial sounded like the George Walker lyric for strings, but I had not heard that piece in years. So
Mhm.
I wrote that piece, and then a few months after it premiered and people told me that, I went back and listened to it, and it's pretty much in the same vein. So it's quite interesting.
Wow.
Quite interesting. But I had no idea. That's the thing.
In the course of many of your pieces, your music, the actual content of the pieces seems to move between styles. Is that something that you've noticed, or do you do it consciously, or do you
Yeah,
do
because
you do you
that,
notice that?
a little bit. I mean, there's some things that like I said, I like doing, and some things that I'm trying to experiment with to see if I can utilize them in other pieces. Right now, I'm starting to write a lot of Stravinsky-esque music,
Mhm.
but that's only because Stravinsky is my favorite composer. And actually, Stravinsky had the rare talent of writing anything, and it sounded like him. Like
Yes.
any piece, you instantly recognize that it's Stravinsky, and that's a skill that hopefully I want to develop someday. Like you hear one of my pieces, and you go, "That's definitely Quinn wrote that." So
Yes.
I'm trying to study Stravinsky compositional techniques as much as possible. And he stole too. Like he's not he stole from he even said it himself. He likes the music of Mozart so much he steals the music of Mozart. And then next thing you know, he wrote Pulcinella. So
Yeah. Um, you we've talked a lot about Stravinsky and the other music that you're interested in, influenced by, but what music do you listen to that might surprise people who are familiar with your work?
I love Latin music. like salsa, mariachi, banda, all of that. And I really admire not only, the salsa singers can do some fantastic stuff that, you know, pretty unbelievable stuff with their voices. The instrumentation, it's just mostly brass and percussion
Hmm.
and bass. But like the variety you can get and the different feelings you can get from that instrumentation is very uh, inspiring to me, to the point where I've written salsa music, or I've attempted to, anyways, under a pseudonym, which I can't tell you about.
Oh,
Uh, Mostly, I wrote it for me, but
yes.
like definitely, growing up in Hispanic neighborhoods and having Hispanic friends who introduced me to this music, uh, and being around like people who like played in bandas and
Hmm.
mariachi groups and all that, definitely got me hooked on the Latin music. So,
That was definitely surprising to me. I did not know that you had such a love of Latin music. I personally also have a a huge love of Latin jazz.
oh
Um,
yes.
and Tito Puente and Mongo Santa Maria and Pancho Sanchez, and of course the now unfortunately the late Chick Corea. All of that is huge, has been a huge influence on me, and I so it's good. It was surprising to hear that you also had that interest. In addition to that, what um what other sort of recreational activities aside from composition do you have? I mean, artists often seem to be defined by others solely by the medium in which they work. They're just like, well, that guy's a musician. That's all he does. That's all he knows. But we know that's not true, right? And what other
Mhm.
interests, artistic or recreational, do you have that people might not be so familiar with?
I'm huge into literature.
Really?
And that's still stemming from younger, when I was younger, that I used to read a whole lot. And I actually used to, before I composed music, I wanted to be a writer of like novels and plays and things like that, and screenplays. Originally wanted to write movies and stuff like that. I originally wanted to be an actor. I'm still not opposed to that idea, although I'm probably terrible, to be honest. Uh, but definitely, I like reading a lot, and I definitely, as you mentioned in the introduction, I love the Rite. Uh, and maybe someday I'll embark on writing another novel or something like that. But yeah, I'm huge, and when I was in the elementary school, I read it. I was reading at a college level, so I've always been a huge reader of books.
And well, you write a blog, right?
Will I?
No, I'm
What?
sorry.
Yeah.
You currently write a blog, do you not?
Well, yeah, and I need to update it. My last post was last year, so I need to find something to write about. But
Ah,
yeah,
I see. How would you say your life and compositional process and work has changed during this pandemic?
I definitely would have to say, if anything, I've gotten busier.
Really?
Uh, yeah, and that's mostly because uh, I have all these small pieces that don't take too long to learn, and they're accessible. And people have been putting on a lot of virtual recitals, which means lots of virtual networking with different people around the world. And doing the virtual networking and things like that, and having my pieces played in these virtual recitals, have definitely afforded me a lot of cool opportunities. And I've gotten the chance to meet people I thought I would never meet before, because they were hosting these virtual workshops that I went to or something like that. Like, and now good friend and mentor of mine, Edwin Outwater, who is the music director of San Francisco Conservatory, has been a great guiding light for me. But if the pandemic had happened, I probably would have never heard of him. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite interesting the direction um uh my career has taken during the pandemic. So, and when the pandemic's over, I would have to say I'm probably going to be even more busier than I am now.
Yeah, because when live performance really comes back, it's going to be huge. Friends of mine have talked to me about it, and they say, well, one of them said that he thought that when live performance came back, it would just be perceived as a novelty, again, because we've been without it for so long that people will just be like, wow, this is so amazing, and it'll feel so lifelike and venal and real, and um and so I'm sure that the arts are gonna, if they come back, which I really do hope they will, they'll come back with a bang.
I was gonna say I agree with everything you just said. I mean, like we even have like the Dallas Symphony, who has kept playing even during these times, and
Hmm.
everything is slowly starting to open back up, and then everyone's starting to get vaccinated again. By the end of the year, the entire population of the U.S. should be vaccinated. So,
One would hope.
well, yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
But definitely, I think by the end of the year, we'll start to see some degree of normal in terms of performance and all that.
You mentioned that you've been able to meet new people that you perhaps would not have been able to meet under normal circumstances. Are there other people in life who you'd like to work with? Who are some people you'd like to do future collaborations with that you haven't yet?
Hmm. It's a good question. I mean, most of the people I met, remotely, possibly I definitely want to meet with them in real life. I've been working with Jake Heggie as part of an initiative I'm doing in which he's my assigned mentor. Jake is fantastic. If you remember going to the Dallas Opera, I don't know if you ever seen Moby Dick when that was here.
I did not see Moby Dick.
Yeah, he wrote that,
Yes,
and he's one of the most popular opera composers and a super nice
absolutely.
guy. Like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh. So definitely, I definitely want to meet Jake someday. Uh, who else? I mean, I
For
met a ton of people.
before you continue on that, you mentioned that there's you're he and you are part of an initiative. Talk about that. What is that initiative that Jake Heggie and you are part of?
Well, it's an initiative hosted by the National Associations of Teachers of Singing. It's an initiative, art songs composed by young Black composers like myself. So, I mean, and to be honest, I originally wasn't going to apply for that because I mean I've written art songs before, but I don't have an interest in making a uh, career out of art songs. But then
Hmm.
I saw that Jake Hagee was one of the mentors. You
Yes.
didn't get to pick a mentor. Like they just assigned you one. So like I'm basically played a game of chance by putting it in an application. I got
Wow.
accepted, and then um, I guess another thing by chance, Jake was my assigned mentor, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got
That
lucky.
is
I really did.
fantastic. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you, man. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, Jake Heggie came by SMU when I was studying there, and he talked to he spoke to the composition class that I was in, and I really, you're absolutely right. He's a phenomenally kind man, and I really did like what he had to say. He said some things about the nature of arts and how they're funded in this country that really spoke to me, and have stuck with me forever. So the other thing that I'd like to ask you about is and I mentioned this at the top of the program, that you are a frequent contributor to the International Music Score Library Project, or IMSLP, as it's commonly referred to. How and when did you first discover IMSLP?
I've been using IMSOP since I was in middle school. I would be in computer class, and instead of doing computer work, I would definitely go on there and look at scores. This is back before you had to wait 15 seconds and everything. Everything just loaded up quick. So that's what I would do, and I still somehow still passed that class, in case you're wondering. But I think it was around that time that I signed up for an account, and I just started kind of making my own additions and recordings and post them on there. I no longer do that, but I've had some people kind of like hit me up out of the blue and ask, "Is this you?" And I'd be embarrassed because I did most of that stuff when I was a teenager. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, I've been a member of that site so long that when they did that thing where you have to pay for a membership, the members that were already there, they gave them free memberships for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So mine expires in 2025.
Ah.
So I don't have to wait the 15 seconds now because I have a 10-year membership they just
Well,
gave
that's
me.
nice. Glad they grandfathered you in.
Yeah, it worked out.
What?
But I don't really use it for much else besides looking at scores and things like that.
Mhm. When you were uploading pieces, what was the most esoteric piece of music that you've been able to upload? Because there are some pieces on there that you can't that are not easily accessible, which is sort of the the point of the project.
Hmm. Well, I can't remember where I found it, but it was a band piece from the 19th century by a Russian princess that I made a new edition of, and I just posted it on there. Yeah, a Russian princess wrote a band piece that's fairly interesting, and
That's insane.
the only addition they had on there was like things like bombardon and
Uh-huh.
serpents and things like that. So I set it for modern band and I put it on there.
Incredible.
I
Have
don't
you
know
ever
if
had
anyone's played it, but
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you'd ever heard if anyone had ever performed it.
I don't know. Maybe.
You should we'll chat after. I think I know someone who would be interested in getting that performed because that's phenomenal.
Well,
That's
I
really
mean, if
intriguing.
they like the musical content on it,
Uh-huh.
content of it, musically, I don't find it a very interesting piece.
Oh.
But I just created that new edition.
Sure. So what projects are you working on right now? What music are you writing?
Uh, my main projects right now are solo pieces. I'm writing a piece for solo oboe for someone who used to be in the National Symphony Orchestra,
Whoa.
uh, and he'll he'll play it at the International Double Reed Convention sometime soon. I just got to complete it first, and then I'm writing a trombone solo for someone in the Army band actually who used to go to SMU. Believe it or
Oh,
not,
really? I bet I know who it is if you were able to mention his name.
Miles Blakemore.
Yes, I love that guy. I haven't seen that guy in years. Miles Blakemore is a
Oh my
monster
gosh, you know him?
on his instrument. Yeah, I do. Yeah, he and I were cohort at SMU for about 2 years.
Oh man, he's the one. That's who I'm writing it for.
He's great. He's fantastic. You can write him anything. He'll play it.
Oh, that's good to know now. That's good to
Oh
know.
yeah. Well, he might call me up later and be like, "Why the hell did you tell him that? Now I have to play it." No, I'm kidding. I can't play that. What are you talking about? No, he'll do fine. No, he's an absolute beast on the trombone, right? Am I right
Yeah.
about that? Okay. He's an absolute beast on the trombone. He's a great guy to work with. Great guy to work with.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
didn't know that he was in the army band.
I think that's what he's doing now. But like he somehow heard of me. I guess we had the mutual SMU connection. So
Mhm.
yeah. So that's another piece I'm working on. And then, mm, I mean, I guess I don't know if I'm allowed to make this public, but you heard of the opera I'm writing for Fort Worth Opera, right?
I had not.
So that's going to be a multi-year project. It's not public yet, so I
Mhm.
guess I.
We can
But
cut that out of this if you need to.
no, no, it's fine.
Okay.
I mean, by the time this comes out, it'll probably be public, so it's fine.
So you're writing something for Fort Worth Opera.
A one-act opera, yes.
I know one of the stage managers at the Fort Worth Opera. She used to work. She was at the Dallas Opera when I was a crew member there. Um, Lisa Marie Lang. Uh,
Hmm.
if you get to meet her, she's exceptionally nice. I think she's still there. I think she is. I think she recently got a job there. And so, if you run into her, tell her Dell says hi. Probably won't
Okay.
remember me. I was only at the I was only at the TDO for a season, so she may not remember me. But anyway,
Okay. I will do. We'll do that.
so you're writing mostly solo pieces. Would you say that that is? Would you attribute that to the pandemic? That solo work is I guess one of the easiest things to perform under these conditions.
Yeah, and plus, like I have direct contact with these performers
Hmm.
um, anytime I wish, except 2 in the morning. But like, I could definitely, if I have any questions about what I'm writing for, anything about the instrument, I can definitely just like reach out to them fairly quickly. That's the beauty of solo pieces like that. With orchestral pieces, I mean, sometimes you have the conductor if they're available, and you don't really interact with any of the orchestra members. But solo pieces are really intimate, and affords you that kind of collaborative opportunity, I would have to say.
Hmm. And you conduct a lot of your own pieces.
More and more, yes.
When did you become interested in conducting?
When I was very, very young, because like I mentioned previously, I used to go to a lot of Dallas Symphony rehearsals. So I'd see the different conductors come in, uh, and how they rehearse the music, first of all, but how they affect the sound of the orchestra with just their hands and occasionally a little stick. And it was really interesting to me. And so, uh, really didn't start conducting until I got to high school. I had a really supportive band director who let me conduct the band in my own compositions. Really started embarking on the serious study of conducting when I went to college. I took a few college classes, but most of the stuff I learned about conducting was mostly through observation. Uh, and believe it or not, Dr. Phillips at SMU says that he learned conducting mostly by observation as well. Uh, but
That sounds exactly like something he would say.
he told me that in the lesson one time.
Yeah.
And I just took it to heart. And so most of my study of conducting has been mostly through going to Dallas Symphony rehearsals and watching, Fabio just came in and he's great with the orchestra. So watching
Absolutely.
Fabio and things like that. And starting to do workshops. I worked with Miguel Hart Bedoya, who conducts Fort Worth, or used to conduct Fort Worth Symphony. He's leaving
Mhm.
now. I find that I'm starting to conduct more and more, and that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. I don't know if I'm going to ever take like a music director position, but I would love like an artistic partner or a creative chair position with an orchestra, so I can do both composition and conducting.
Yes, I can imagine that conducting would be a very good way to get your own pieces performed, and also to give other composers a helping hand, and kind of start to change the current landscape of the symphonic complex. The symphonic landscape still is very much rooted in preservatism, of preserving the works of the quote unquote masters of an older time. And this was most evident during the year of Beethoven's 250th birthday. Many orchestras continued to just play Beethoven throughout the year as normal, and but other orchestras said no, we're going to not play Beethoven, and many people were calling for a ban on Beethoven during his 250th birthday, be- solely because there was a belief that that's not what Beethoven would have wanted. He would have wanted symphonies and patrons to be supporting the work of new composers. And so I would imagine that being in a conductor position or a music director position would not only allow you to further your own compositional aspirations, but also to maybe help further those of other young composers.
Absolutely, because we cannot forget the times we live in. I mean, music is still progressing, and we don't want to be left behind. We just simply can't be. And uh, more orchestras. You see, actually, that landscape is starting to change. That more orchestras are starting to uh, recognize that there are symphonic works of value that were composed by women and composed by
Hmm.
composers of color, like myself.
Yes.
And they're starting to be programmed more and more. Like I know that the composer Florence Price, who is maybe the first black female symphonist in the U.S. Is starting to. She's going undergoing a revival, and a lot of people are programming her symphonies. Major orchestras like the Chicago Symphony, who actually was played her pieces back in the 1930s. And so, and then nowadays with the Beethoven 250 thing, some orchestras actually found a creative way to do that. Like I know before everything kind of shut down, the Philadelphia Orchestra not only played the Beethoven symphonies, but they commissioned works by new composers, uh, younger composers that to pair with these symphonies. So you would go to hear Beethoven symphonies, but you would hear a young composer's response to those symphonies, and that is an extremely interesting way to keep the public engaged with not only new music but with the masterworks as well, for sure.
That's excellent because, these symphonies have to appeal to their base, which is the older crowd that continues to pay subscriptions to their concerts and whatnot, and the older crowd, not to their discredit, wants to hear what they want to hear, which is old works. um Old, I say old, it's not a derogatory word. The classics, Mozart and Beethoven and Mendelssohn and Bach. Berlioz would be considered a little crazy, and then Stravinsky's right out sometimes, to some of these people. But what you described is absolutely the perfect way to reel in the older crowd and then expose them to the work of the new composers, in a way that makes sense and is complete. And I would really love to see music groups of all sizes do more of that. Just as an aside, I saw a wonderful concert before the pandemic hit, done by the Dallas Winds, which was a pairing of Mozart and Varese. Did you see that concert by chance?
No, but I heard about it.
It was incredible. It was very well done, both logistically and musically. I mean, the way that they structured it, I can't remember what they started with, but every other piece was Mozart or Varese. So they would go Mozart, then Varese, then Mozart, then Varese, and it was pretty seamless. They didn't do a lot of massive set changes. They went right into each one, and I think they did one where they did ionization straight in, like a taka to a Mozart piece, and it worked. And the piece before ionization was also a taka, and I thought, this is incredible. We need to do more things like this.
I mean, that's the beauty of having like creative minds that are thinking like this, and then
Hmm.
we're starting to see more orchestra boards that are open to things like that. Is that we're going to start to see more programming like that, and hopefully we keep programming like that to keep classical music relevant to the upcoming generation. Because as you mentioned before, that our audiences are getting older and older, and eventually they'll die off. Well, we got to find a way to pass that love of classical music on to the younger generation by learning how to keep it. No, I'm not talking about TikTok videos. I'm talking about
No.
creative programming
Yes.
that is relevant and speaks to the current times and is interesting, is fascinating, and really makes you think to and can think about and connect to the music.
Quinn Mason, thank you so much for joining me today here. It was great to get to talk to you again. I hope you're doing well, and I'll look forward to speaking with you again in the future, maybe in a few months.
No worries. Thank you for having me. It was nice catching up.
If you would like to listen to more of Quinn's music, all of it is available at masonianmusic.com. A link to that website will be provided on our website and in this episode's description. If you liked this episode of Open Parameter Podcast, consider becoming a supporting member by subscribing to our Patreon. You can subscribe to Open Parameter by going to patreon.com/openparameter. For a schedule of upcoming guests and events, point your web browser to openparameter.net. I'm Del Cook, the creative director of Open Parameter. From all of us here at Open Parameter, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.